Hello everyone. Welcome to today's knowledge session. I'm Gaur Shukla, software consultant at Nasdaq. So, today's topic for the session is Robusta, a unified Kubernetes monitoring and observability tool. So, I hope my screen is visible. So, I will move on to the next slide. So, let's move with some knowledge etiquettes. So, before we start off, which knowledge etiquettes needs to be maintained during the session. So first is please join the session 5 minutes prior to the session start time. Next is after the session is concluded, try to submit a constructive feedback for the session and keep your mobile devices in silent mode. In case you need to attend an urgent call, feel free to move out of the session. And lastly, try to avoid any unwanted disturbance during the session. So yeah, let's move forward to see the agenda for the today's session. So we'll start with the introduction, like what is Robusta, and then we'll understand more its architecture, core components, and how it works, and what are the main features of the Robusta. Then we will next see the demo of how to get started using the Robusta tool, how to set up Robusta in Kubernetes distributions like AKS, EKS, etc., and other things. So let's start with what is Robusta. So Robusta is basically an open source monitoring and observability tool for Kubernetes. It's an open source platform for multi-cluster Kubernetes monitoring, troubleshooting, and automation. Basically, Robusta extends Prometheus, which means it fetches metrics from the Prometheus and visualizes it on the Robusta UI. And so for this, Robusta uses automation rules, uh, which is called playbooks, to automatically fetch the data you need to investigate and attaches it to the alerts. Alerts like, for example, when any alerts is fired on the pods, it fetches the pod logs, why the pod has crashed, and then attaches it to the alerts. So why it is different from Prometheus? So Prometheus basically have some query language, right, from PL. So you can fetch metrics from Prometheus and use it in Robusta. So basically it's a Prometheus extender. So next is by listening all the events in our cluster, Robusta can describe why alerts fired and what happened and and we do about it. Basically the remediation part, why the pod has crashed or why any anomaly has occurred in the cluster. So currently major distributions like AKS, EKS or the GKE, all major Kubernetes distributions are supported by Robusta. Only Minikube is not supported. They have no clear explanation why it is not supported, but yeah, that's it. Moving forward to the architecture of Robusta. So Robusta runs in clusters to deployment. Deployment is Robusta forwarder. So what Robusta forwarder basically does is connect to the API server of the Kubernetes, monitors any Kubernetes changes and events, and collects that data and forward that to the next deployment, which is Robusta runner. Robusta runner basically does is the receive all events and data from the API server and the data source, and then it takes actions based on some uh, trigger and action based on some playbooks. Playbooks is nothing, just some automation rules, which we'll see in the next slide. So this is a core component which I talked about, Robusta forwarder and Robusta runner. So Robusta runner basically, Robusta forwarder basically what it is a lightweight component deployed within our Kubernetes cluster, and it connects to the Kubernetes API server to monitor events. Like events for anything could be like pod has crashed or scaled scaling of the pods or any deployment has happened, or other tools like Helm rollout or the update has happened. So all these events had covered by the Robusta forwarder, and then what it does is forward that data to the Robusta runner. And Robusta runner is this brain of the Robusta system, which processes and all received events from the forwarder and evaluate based on some configured playbooks uh, as I discussed, it is automation rules against some incoming events. Yeah, and when playbook is triggered, it executes some actions like any alert or the remediation part. So why pod is crashed? So this have to be done. So pod will be again healthy. Let's move to how Robusta actually works. So conceptually, Robusta does three things. Basically, first it listens passively to various sources like Robusta monitors all Kubernetes events and Prometheus alert. So all sources are basically passively listened by Robusta, and then it actually actively collects all observability data, like whatever events had occurred. It collects all that data and in the form of logs, graphs, and thread dumps, all according whichever we defined in the playbooks in Robusta. All according to that playbook, we send notification to the sinks. Sinks are nothing, just some platform where we want to receive notifications, like MS Teams, PagerDuty, Slack, whatever platform you need to receive events or alerts that are called sinks. So, how to use Robusta? Basically, there are three ways to use Robusta: open source versus SaaS. Basically, first is Robusta versus Robusta open source. What it does is just collects data, send processes events, and send alerts and notification to external destinations like Slack, PagerDuty, etc. But it has no UI. Uh, but second, and the full experience comes with Robusta open source plus SaaS UI. What it does, it it just not send data to the external destination, but also has Robusta UI, which we'll see in the our demo. And third one is Robusta versus plus self-hosted UI, which is basically the on-prem experience. And basically, what it does, you can install Robusta on your on-prem and self-hosted UI. So it comes with enterprise plan. So enterprise plan has some pro features and also some cost. So according to the cost, you can use a self-hosted UI also. Next, what is playbook? So playbook basically as I earlier called, the playbook is an automation rule for detecting, investigating, or fixing problems in new cluster. So there are two things like trigger and action. Every playbook consists of a trigger, which is like any pod has crashed or any Prometheus alert has arrived. So based on this condition, a trigger happens, and when a trigger happens, there should be an action according to that trigger. So action can enrich alerts and silence them and remediate any problems occurred in the cluster. Playbook basically behave like a pipeline. When any event come into Robusta, they are checked against these triggers. So if there is a match, a trigger is fired, and then relevant playbook runs, which means when a trigger fires, action should be taken, and action should be taken according to the playbook. Whatever action is defined in the playbook, that action will be received in the context of the event. Uh, if notification was gathered by generated by the playbook, they are sent to the sinks. What does it mean? When the Robusta runner receive the events and process the playbook according to the playbook, whichever action has been taken, they are sent to the event. If action is like sending alerts to the sinks, which is some third party tool like PagerDuty MS Teams, so they are sent to the sinks. Otherwise, if there are some immediate action needs to be taken, there are also those things to be done. So let's see the example playbook. So we can actually understand more. So you can see this is a format of a custom playbook where you can see the trigger part and the action part. Trigger is basically to track failed liveness probes, and action is for notifying the user. So what this playbook does is they uses the on Kubernetes warning event create trigger to that fires once one each liveness probe failure happens. So every time a liveness probe failure happens, this trigger has triggered, and then action according to this trigger has been taken, which is to notify the user that liveness probe has failed. For that, it uses the create finding action to generate a notification and event resource action to gather all other events on the same resource. So this is how a playbook works in Robusta. We'll see more in the demo. So now let's see the main features of Robusta. So first and foremost, most important feature of the Robusta is multi-cluster observability. That we can monitor our Kubernetes cluster from a single dashboard and also receive events and alerts in one place. And second is auto alerts. What does it do? We get very simple and secure alerts with cause of issue. It does not have any noise or useless information in the alert. It basically, you know, there's no noise or useless information present in alerts, so that's a plus point. So we can get auto alerts in the Robusta, and they also tell us why it's wrong by attaching logs of the pods and other things. Third is change tracking. So we can view detailed timeline of all changes in one Kubernetes environment. So what basically it does, that we can track any change, like if any Prometheus alert has fired or any Helm update has been done or any deployment, any pods have been deployed. So all this change tracking can be done by main features in the main features of the Robusta. Next is cost savior. So it is cost saving also. It provides cost saving. It uses patterns and recommend ways to optimize resource allocation. So there are no over provisioning of the resource. Like we can actually see how much CPU and memory pods and deployments are using. So we can reduce wasted resources and avoid any over provisioning of the resource. So let's get started with Robusta. So we'll see how to install Robusta and use it. So for that, I have created a document. So there are two prerequisites. First, a supported Kubernetes cluster should be. So you should have like so. For my case, I will use AKS. So I have created an AKS cluster here. I will connect to the cloud shell as my local terminal is misbehaving today. I don't know why. So yeah. And for install to install Robusta in your Kubernetes cluster, you should have a Robusta CLI. Am I audible?
Yes, Gautam.
Yes.
Okay. So to install Robusta, should have a Robusta ULI CLI. So for to install this Robusta CLI, this is the command. Also, if you want to install using Docker, so you can go to the documentation here, and you can also install with Docker also. Just you have to curl this URL, and then this script you need to execute, and then you can install Robusta CLI. So I have already installed CLI, so I will move ahead to the next step. Next step is actually the deployment
Gautam,
is, yeah.
I think your screen didn't change. We are still seeing the PPT.
Okay, I think, wait a second. Let me know when my screen is up.
Yes, Teams.
Yeah. So this is the Python CLI command to install the Robusta CLI, and this is the Docker way. And the new feature has been added in the Robusta that you can create the config file here with the web installation. So when you click here to create the config, it will open a new uh, window where you can sign up with Google or the Azure to create your account and generate the config file. So actually we are doing the deployment with Helm, so we will need a values.yaml file, right? So to generate this using for the Robusta, where all the configuration of the Robusta should be in a values file. So this is called Robusta generated values file for the Helm. So this is the command to generate that file. So let's generate that. Let's check if the cluster is connected. Yeah, it's connected. So we will generate the generated values.yaml file, which we'll use to do the deployment. So this asks some questions, right? So where you want to connect to the sync, which sync you want to connect. So first question it asks if you want to configure Slack integration. So yes, if I want to connect to Slack for my alerts. So this will give you an API. If you click this, the next window will open, and you can connect your uh, any Slack workspace to the cluster. So let me allow all this. As I have already have Azure DevOps workspace, so I can just connect it, and you can see it got connected. And if I go back to our see, like you can see here, you are just connected Robusta to the Slack of Azure DevOps workspace. Next question it asks, which Slack channel should I send notification to? If you want to send Slack notification to any existing, let me open Slack, any existing channel, so you can do that. As I have multiple channels in this workspace, but if you want to create a new channel for the notification, you can create a new channel. Let me create take a small alerts. So I can create a channel, and when it's created, I will just give these values to the so take a small alerts, right? So in this Slack channel, the notification will be arrived. Next is it is asking if you want to configure any other sync like MS Teams. So currently, if you want to, I can show you like how to do that. So if you want to uh, configure MS Teams also to integrate into Robusta, so you have to have a webhook URL for the teams, right? So you can just have come here and paste the URL, and you can done with integrating MS Teams into Robusta. So next question it asks configure Robusta UI sync. So we are going to demo with the Robusta SaaS plus open source both. Like we want to have a Robusta UI where we can see all those pods and visualization which we talk about for the Kubernetes observability, right? So we will go with this, and it will ask you for an email where it send you an alert or create an account with that email. So you can give this email. Then the next will be the choose your account name. So it is basically the organization name which will show up in the Robusta UI. So we can give it, and let's give it Nasdaq. So it is now successfully registered. You can see that the next questions will be like if you want to have end user license agreement, so you have to accept the agreement if you want to use a robusta. So and the last question will be like if you want to send some exception reports like reports and other things, all robusta UI basically whatever data it has, if you want to send to help improve robusta, so if you can do that. If you don't want to do that, just say no, and it will now it has completed the generated values.yaml. You can see here generated values.yaml is present. If I just get to show, so all these configuration, uh, it, it is used to configure and connect our cluster to the Robusta. So it is global config signing key and account ID. These are Robusta configuration for our account, which will now generate when our cluster is connected. Then we can see that. And here you can see the robusta UI sync. These are the Kubernetes secrets. So these should be managed accordingly that. And here you can see that the Slack is now connected. The you can see the name of the sync and the Slack channel which we use to send the alerts to all these, and the API key, all this information is present. And MS Teams also we didn't give this webhook URL as we do not want to connect MS Teams. So this is done, and this part is basically enable Prometheus stack. What it does, if your cluster already has Prometheus, right? So you just give this value to the false. Then if existing Prometheus is installed in the cluster, that existing Prometheus will be used by this Robusta. And if you don't have a Prometheus already installed in your system or the cluster, so this value should be true. And what it will do, I will show you when the install Robusta. It will install Prometheus also with the Robusta deployment. So let's deploy Robusta with the Helm commands, adding Helm jar. A Helm repo using this command, we will add the Robusta repo, and when it is added, we'll install it with our generated values.yaml file. So few things to be see here. So here you have to give the cluster name. So whatever name of the cluster you have to connect. So cluster name should be here. So my cluster name is knowledge, and this is a generated values path of the file, generated values.yaml file. So let's hit enter and should install the Robusta chart to the cluster. It takes basically some time, and my bandwidth is also low, so please bear with it. Also, if you have a generated values.yaml file, right? So if you want to connect another cluster, like I want to connect this cluster, but if you want to connect another cluster or multiple of cluster, so basically you just have to generate this values.yaml file once. And if you want to connect other cluster, just use this generated values.yaml and give the name of the cluster, and all these cluster will be connected to this one Robusta UI only. So that's what is about multi-cluster observability with Robusta. You can do with others like Grafana and Prometheus also, but we can do it here. I don't know why it's taking too much time. So it is now installed, right? You can see its status is deployed, and this will give you a link. This is the link. If I hit it open, let's open this, and you can see the UI has opened. Should not be like that. It should directly open the. I don't know how this. Let me copy this and open it in some other person. This does not ask for any login. I don't know why it is asking to login. Hello.
Yes, Gaurav, you
I
are
think
audible.
could be the service or service IP here, either a load balancer type or load export type. I think that is the way where you can get the Robusta up and running.
Actually, Shanwas, we can just get it running by this URL only, but let's go forward it also. That's what you were saying, right?
Sorry, can you say
You
that
you are
again?
asking to put forward the deployment, right? To
No,
see,
not to forward. I think it got exposed using a service, either of load balancer type or load pool type.
basically what it does is just to give you an UI, right? To visit the web UI at here. So I have already done this, but I think some cache issues or something like that is happening. That's why it is asking me to log in. Otherwise, it does not
Okay.
ask.
Uh, this website, right? So
Yeah.
this is not a custom website, right? That's I think the normal SaaS UI. I think you do have to
Yes,
log in,
it is.
right? So if it is a SaaS UI, then how do you expect it to open your robust deployment? You should have to log in and then only it should be redirecting. If it was a self-hosted UI, the URL would have opened that. I don't think
Yeah.
that is how SaaS UI works. I think you
No,
already logged in, that's fine.
basically when I
Yeah,
was generating the generated values.yaml file, right? Let me show you again. So in the cloud shell. So here I have already given the mail. So based on this mail, what it does, it creates an account for this email and creates the account and then give here after the installment, gives us a URL to visit the web UI. You don't have to create any account. It automatically creates for you. But I think I have already created an account before for the testing, so I think that's, and then I logged out. So I think that's some cache issues is going on. Otherwise, I have done multiple times this. This doesn't really happen. Firefox is also not opening.
yeah, that is fine, right? But what I'm saying is this platform.robusta.dev, right? So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
a
you are right. It
centralized,
is a SaaS UI. It is a SaaS
yes,
UI.
SaaS
So
UI for
yes, it
everyone,
should have
right?
a login. Yeah.
Yes, you should have to log in. Otherwise, the URL would have been a little different with some maybe queries or parameters so that it contains your like the payload or maybe the credentials tokens for your auth, right? You do need to
Yeah, yeah.
log
I think it is that's why the cache issue is happening. So it must have stored the previous login session, right? So I just logged out before the session from the previous Robusta SaaS UI. So I think that's why it is not opening and asking me to log in backlog. So that's why I think it's happening. Otherwise, let's see to port forward it. I think it's a SaaS UI, so that's not an option also. Let me try in the incognito. Login with the old email. Mm-hmm. So this is my previous one which I created for the test. You can say it. So this is how a SaaS UI looks, a Robusta UI looks basically. So the apps pane, right? So it all has pods, deployment, and the stateful sets. All these resources of the Kubernetes present here, and with the status also if it is ready or not. Like I have for the testing, I have prepared a crash pod, right? A deployment crash pod has done, and it is uh, basically failed, right? So an alert has been, you can see there have been two alert has been fired, and you can just go with the click here for the crash pod. You can see detailed and visualized view of the pod why it is failed, and all the events and the errors should be here once it's loaded. So yeah, all those events and alerts, which alerts have been fired, and let me go to the SAS, sorry, Slack, and this is the cluster that have connected. So you can see here there have been multiple alerts, and with alerts not just some alert that pod has crashed or something. It also attached here some log of the pod. You can here export it, download it, or share with some other team member of the project, and it has all the info of the pod, like and the deployment, which namespace is in, and previous how it is terminated, and what was the start time and the finish time. So all this, and if a cluster has some memory issues, all these alert is fetched from the Prometheus and also sent to the Slack or any sync which you have connected, like memory issues. Or and these are the which I have talked about, the playbooks, right? So playbooks have uh, given these buttons, which is basically to if you want to investigate, you can right click here and go directly to the deployment which is crashed, right? So it will give you all the logs and other information why it is crashed, and all other. I was talking about change tracking, right? So you can view it in the timeline section. So we do the timeline will show all events and alerts that have been fired. We can see only required events also by selecting the needed namespace and the cluster. I don't know why the system is misbehaving. And if we go to the nodes, right, so we can get the nodes information also. If you go to the node section, it will show CPU and memory efficiency and uses of the cluster, how much CPU and memory used. Like here you have live in the live demo, you can see in another alert has been fired, which is the same memory resource request issue. Current the status is basically the current total of 8.87 GB, 4.81 GB is used. So it currently has low warning alert, right? And if you have low, medium, and it is basically for the new AKS cluster connection which we have done AKS knowledge, right? So you can see in the live demo it says alert has been fired for the memory issue, even though we cannot access the Robusta UI. Let load, then I can explain further. So you can see here, you can do the comparison also if you want to compare between cluster namespace and some resources. So you can also, I thought this is the best feature if you have any issues and you have want to compare both resources or the cluster or any namespace. So you can compare here also. And the alerting has new features, right? So this is the main feature of the Robusta, that you can configure alerts from these templates. You can say that these are the alerts that already have been configured for our cluster, and you can see there are many templates for the cluster that has been connected. And if you want to create a new alert, you can go here for new alert from template. So this is basically some playbooks that have been written, and from those template you can configure new alerts to our cluster. Like if you want to use a CPU throttling high, if there's some high, this is, you can see all these some Prometheus queries, right? CPU throttling high. So this basically fetching metrics from Prometheus, and from those metrics, this creates a alert from the templates. You can also, if you further scroll down, you can see the PromQL, right? The Prometheus query language. If you want to use it, you can directly copy here and go from into Prometheus and use there. So this is some of the advantage of the Robusta which you can. And if you want to just create a new alert for the CPU throttling high, you can just hit it, create new alert, and new alert has been created for the CPU. If I go to the one, you can see here. And if you click some of the alerts, you can see all these and also edit it. Or once it is uh, updated, you can also update after any alert is created. And next is efficiency. This is for basically the cost recommendation. This is not fully functional, right? And it comes with pro subscription of the Robusta. So what it basically does, it is a new feature from Robusta. Previously it didn't have this feature, where Robusta scans the whole cluster and gives a recommendation which resource are using more memory and CPU. Like here, uh, you can see the live, what it basically needs, a new cluster cannot be scanned fully and gives a recommendation. Currently it does not have any recommendations because the cluster is very new. You can see the warning here that at least 3 hours of data needed for request limit recommendations. So currently the cluster is new, so those recommendations are not present, but this is the new feature from Robusta. Last time I visited here, so it was not present. And if you come to plan and usage, you can see all these plans. And Robusta basically provides you 15 days free pro plan. So after 15 days, it is basically, it will cost you some uh, bucks. And if you want to have an enterprise plan for the self-hosted UI, you can also have that, and you can contact them directly. And let's go for the our back feature. If you go to the setting, you can see the users, all users that have access to this Robusta. Currently I have the only one with the role admin and status active. I can also change the role of any user, admin or the user. Currently only have two roles, admin and the user. And if you want to add any user, you can just add them, give their email address, and just invite him and choose type of the role. You want to give the user or the admin role, you can just give them and add to give the role based access control for the Robusta. And if you go to the node which I was talking about, so it will give you all the CPU and memory utilization for the node, what memory efficiency and CPU efficiency it is currently at. So you can see all it there. And you can, if click on one of the nodes, you can see the very detailed and visualized view of the node, like in Grafana, right? And also give you the what pods are running in the node with the memory and CPU usage. And also it will give you events and alerts also. What alerts? Currently there is no alerts for this node. And this is a timeline. So currently in the given timeline, these alerts have been fired and priority wise it is grouped like high, low. So all these events you can see. So for the, if I go to the apps and the crash pod, right, which I deployed for the first to see the if pod has any issues and if I get alerted, right? So currently you can see 2 alerts have been fired, 3 alerts have been fired, and you can see the timeline of alerts when it is fired. And also for the pod you can see the CPU and memory usage. So basically all those details you can see in Prometheus and Grafana, but here what is you can do, which is basically you can do all these things with the UI. In Prometheus you can have query language and query those data, but here it is very in visualized way, and also it gives you the YAML of the and the current state of the YAML. You can see all this right here. So these are basically the features of Robusta which I wanted to talk about. So this is pretty much everything from my side. If you guys have any questions and queries, you can ask.